Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we have another brand new TNG model to take a look at. And what's actually quite interesting is that so far, out of all of these TNG models, we are 4 in now of this series of models. Only one has actually been a dinosaur, and that is spectacular if you ask me, because even though I absolutely love my dinosaurs, there are so many other prehistoric animals that just consistently get overlooked, especially prehistoric mammals, and we already have 2 in my reviews here so far, and there are actually more to come when it comes to TNG releases. But this time we are checking out a flying reptile as we have the Quetzalcoatlus. I must say that this is another incredible model from TNG. I think the sculpt is absolutely gorgeous. The paint job is absolutely gorgeous. Probably the best version of a Quetzalcoatlus in my collection right here before us now with this TNG version. So let's go ahead and jump straight to a closer look at it right now. So starting up here at the head sculpt of our Quetzalcoatlus, you can see that we have some nice looking fine detail here to the beak of the Pterosaur. You can also see we also have some really nice paintwork as we have actual varying tones of yellows. You can see kind of like an orangish tone here. You can even see that show back up here a little bit at the tip of the beak. But just looking through the beak, it looks like we have some potentially really slight, subtle differences of yellows throughout. You can also see a pinkish tone there on the nostril. There's also a black that kind of circles there around the front of the nostril as well. And everything looks really good as far as both the sculpt and paint job here in the beak of the pterosaur goes. We do have an articulated jaw, of course. You can see the inside of the mouth has an incredibly realistic appearance as far as the sculpting and painting goes. Really nice pinkish tones there for the inside of the mouth, but look at how fantastic that detail is for the inside of the mouth. That looks gorgeous. Although I can definitely say I would have liked to have seen a gloss coat or something on the inside of the mouth. Not something that's absolutely necessary, but it would have been cool to see. And you can also again see that the jaw works perfectly. No problems at all as far as the operation of the jaw. We also have the crest up here on the top of the head of our Quetzalcoatlus, which sports a really nice, kind of like a metallic bluish tone, and then a little bit more of that black in there. Has a glossy look to it overall, and just shines so nicely. Like, when you look at it from a distance, that crest really stands out. You can also see there's a glossy black around the eye that leads up and heads toward the beak. You can see that that looks really good. You can also see we have a nicely and very carefully painted eye, nice black pupil. The eye also sports a gloss coat, so everything there looks really nice as well. You can even see the ear of the pterosaur right there. Now, this is the only thing I think on the entire figure that I'm not a big fan of. And that's how abrupt the transition is here for the articulated jaw when it comes to the beak. You can see that there's like this super abrupt transition. And I don't know how they could have improved this to make it look a little bit smoother. But it works good as far as opening it. And once you have the mouth open, like that looks really good. But when it's closed, you can really see, again, the articulated jaw. It's not a huge deal. It's actually pretty minor overall, but it is something worth mentioning. I think it could have helped it, honestly, if they would have taken this kind of like pinkish tone they have here and just ran that up onto the lower part of the beak here a little bit. Then it probably wouldn't have stood out quite so much, but because this is a very different color from what we see here, it does stand out a little bit. But again, that's just a minor nitpick. It's not anything huge, and it's not super noticeable, but it was something that I did want to point out. But as you start to lead back into the neck of the Quetzalcoatlus, you, of course, pick up some pycnofibers, and you can also see more really nice color variation moving through. We have a nice, very smooth brown here running along the back. You can see a lighter tone for the majority of the side of the neck, kind of like an off-white. You also have some nice stripes here running along the throat as you lead down, which look really cool. And the pycnofibers look great throughout. You can see they are very high quality as far as the actual appearance to the model goes. It looks fantastic when it comes to the amount of detail that is on this and just how vibrant it looks. But as you move down the course of the neck, you can see the structure of the neck very nicely. You can see the throat very nicely here on the underside. And then as you lead down here, you do transition to an alternate tone of color, kind of almost like it's an interesting variation of a brown. I honestly can't even put my finger on what type of a brown I would call that. But you can see again that we have variation of color, that variation almost like a purplish brown, but it kind of runs down here into the upper part of the wing, but you have more variations of browns and everything moving down in there as well. There is just a ton of color variation throughout the course of this pterosaur. You can pick up on the muscle definition as well as like the shoulder blade and everything right there. You can also pick out the elbow as you do move down into the wing. But again, you can see that the entire back looks great as far as the detailing, but also as far as the paintwork. The spinal column is nicely elaborated there. Moving down, you have an alternate lighter shade of a brown there, almost like an orangish brown on the side. And the pycnofibers continue to just overtake the entire pterosaur like we would like to see. Moving down through the course of the wing, you can again see everything looks really good. As you lead down into the hand looks awesome. Absolutely beautiful paintwork. Very nice, very precise paintwork. I love the way that they've highlighted those scoots moving down the fingers. Again, with perfect paintwork, you've got the really, really nicely painted and very nicely sculpted nails with a nice glossy black added to them. So the hands of the pterosaur are incredible and so much nicer than what we saw on the How Long Good version that we're going to be comparing it with. I really think that looks so much better. But as you move up here into the wing, you can see some nice creasing and everything here to the wing because the wing is folded up. So you can see that is nicely shown off, along with a ton of really nice detailing and paint variation throughout. You have like some nicely airbrushed blacks and also some variations of browns and even like grays and everything throughout. Just really, really impressive sculpt and paintwork all over the place. And as you lead out, you continue to see that kind of folding and bending of the skin of the wing really, really nicely. You see more of that here. When you turn and take a look at it from the underside, you can see also, again, lots of really, really nice, very subtle differences in color that are super impressive throughout the course of the entire wing of our pterosaur. And then as you lead back up here, you've got the hip bone, kind of. You can also pick out the muscle definition. I, again, love the color variation throughout. You can see just right here, so much variation of color. You have like that purplish brown. You have a slightly different shade of brown. You have almost like a little hint of like a greenish tone. You've got a darker brown and even some more of that off-white. And it's hard to see it because the wing keeps getting in the way, but that's all, contained right here in that one small area. And then you lead down, and the foot, again, has a similar look to what we had just seen. It's going to be hard to really get in here and see it. Yeah, the shadows are going to overtake it, but similar to what we had seen on the hands with those kind of scoots moving down the toes and the nicely painted nails, again with that glossy black. The paintwork of these TNG models is super impressive. Like, it's really, really carefully and really precisely applied. You can see the same thing again when we lead back up here to the head. We take a look at the eye paint, again, perfectly placed. Moving down, you've got a good idea of what everything looks like. Not much of a difference when it comes to the sculpt because the pterosaur mostly has its head leaning forward but has a slight right turn to the head, ever so slightly. But as you move down, you again have that same look for the wing. You can see this wing is a little bit further forward than what we see on the opposing wing, but that doesn't create a massive difference in the appearance. The only big difference that you'll be able to see is the fact that this wing is kind of held up into the body a little bit more. This one's leaning out just slightly, and the positioning, like that tilt, is slightly different. This one's kind of leaning out a little more, whereas this one's held into the body a little more, if that makes any sense. But you can again see all of the incredible detail here in the skin of the wings. Everything looks amazing in here. The paintwork all looks phenomenal. You can see how this leg is outstretched way more than what you see on the opposing leg, giving us a chance to look at the foot a little bit better over here. You can again see how it darkens to that dark coloration for the foot. Nicely sculpted, nicely painted nails yet again. And then we do have the underside of our pterosaur, and yes, even the underside sports insane amounts of sculpt and paint. You can see that we have this nice kind of a light dry brushing with like a greenish tone moving down here onto the underside of the pterosaur. More pycnofibers throughout, all over the place, and even more variation of color. Even here on the insides of the wings, you can see some slight differences of color throughout the entire underside of the wings. The quality of these models is honestly out of this world, and for the price range that these go for, I can't even begin to express how exciting and how awesome this is to get such beautiful, very high quality, really nicely painted models for such a good price. And now we've got our How Long Good version here in comparison. So straight away, if we turn the two in the same position, we'll go ahead and compare the heads. Well, if we can, the wings kind of get in the way of each other. All right, we'll do it like this. You can see the beak of the TNG version is a bit thicker than what we see on the How Long Good version. The crest is entirely different as far as shape and texturing. The nostrils even look different. Moving back, the eyes look different. The entire look of the pycnofibers is totally different from each other. As you continue to move down, the only thing that you can really see, again, that is a similarity is the positioning of the head and the fact that both pterosaurs are kind of looking up and have that curve in the neck, but there's a good stronger curvature to the neck of the TNG version, more so than what we see on the How Long Good version. The detailing is also a lot more vibrant on the TNG version over the How Long Good version. As you move down, you can see again that the pterosaurs are in a standing position. However, you'll notice that there's definitely a lot more of a bend in the elbow here, more so than what we see over here. The texturing looks a lot better on the TNG version over that one. And if you just sit here and get close and just study the two, like, you'll see so much difference. Honestly, everything is different between these two. Even the positioning of these areas of the wing, the second part of the wing, the second half of the wing, you can see is facing a totally different position compared to what we see on the How Long Good version. The only other strong similarity to the two is the fact that the legs, one leg is kind of outstretched, the other leg is pulled in, but that's just such a common thing. Even if they were inspired by that, it's still a pretty common position to have your pterosaur in if it's in a standing position. It's just something you always see. You can even see this foot is kind of leaving the ground, only the toes are really touching, whereas the How Long Good version, both feet are planted. The feet are much larger on the TNG version, more so than the How Long Good version. The hands are entirely different, quite a bit larger and way better quality on the TNG version. And that doesn't stop there. Again, even if we turn it to the other side, everything looks different on this side compared to the TNG version. So even though, again, they have a similar sort of a stance, you can also see the turns in the heads are quite drastically different. But even though they have a similar look, when you look at them at first glance, they are actually vastly different than each other. And in my opinion, the TNG version absolutely wins this round. And you can see here, when you look at them at first glance, you don't pay too much attention to the differences between the two. They can look very similar, but they're obviously very different. Even the positioning of the back, you could see a little bit of like a hump, like a divot in the back of the TNG version that is not present on the How Long Good version. So there is no doubt in my mind this is an entirely different, much superior sculpt on the TNG version over the How Long Good version. I do like the How Long Good version, but the TNG version is just superior in my opinion overall. But you can see they do look really cool together, and if you do have the How Long Good version, they would definitely make a very neat companion piece to each other as far as having a similar look and everything. They definitely would make a pretty neat looking, maybe like a mating pair between the two. But obviously you could also see the TNG version is bigger than the How Long Good version, so for a size, lengthwise, if we go from the foot to the beak, you are looking at about 8 3/4 inches, or around 22.5 centimeters. And then for a height to the tip of the beak, just shy of about 8 inches, or around 20 centimeters. So definitely quite sizable. And for a comparison to show you that, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon, might want to move him back a little bit to get him more accurately sized, next to our TNG Quetzalcoatlus, and you can see that it is a very large figure, really tall, easily the tallest that we've had, but you would expect that with the Quetzalcoatlus. But it's just impressive to see how much taller than Mr. Papo T-Rex it really is right there. So very cool to see this figure again towering over all of its competition here. But for another comparison, there's our TNG Megacerops next to our Quetzalcoatlus. Again, I wanted to show the smallest and the largest of the figures that we have so far together next to each other. I thought that would be a pretty neat comparison. But for another comparison, there is the Papo version of the Quetzalcoatlus next to the TNG version, and this is another instance where, again, if you have a standing Quetzalcoatlus, you usually have one leg back, one leg forward. You could see the exact same thing again here for the Papo version, though the Papo version is obviously a lot lower to the ground. But yet again, I would say that the TNG version wins this round, even though the Papo version is awesome. I really do love that Quetzalcoatlus. I definitely prefer the TNG version yet again. And then for a random comparison, we have the Collect A Deluxe Dimetrodon, the Safari LTDU Tyrannus, and Schleich Diabloceratops, 3 totally random figures for 3 different companies that I've been using as comparison pieces a lot lately, because it's nice to just cover a few different companies with totally random figures, because the chances of someone having one of them are pretty good, so hopefully you'll have one of these figures here to compare with the Quetzalcoatlus. And then for one final comparison, again, just another totally random one, we have a Mattel Velociraptor here next to our Quetzalcoatlus, just to iron out one final comparison in hopes that you might have this figure potentially if you haven't had any of the others. So this TNG Quetzalcoatlus is another gorgeous figure added to quite a list of gorgeous figures now for this brand new company's brand new line. And this Quetzalcoatlus is easily, I would say, my favorite in my collection now. The sculpt is incredible. The sculpt is also really highly detailed and really vibrant. The detail and the amount of it is super impressive on this. The pycno fibers look great throughout. The skin folds and skin wrinkles and skin detailing, especially in the skin areas of the wings, is really, really impressive. But as a whole, the detail all over the entire model is extremely impressive and also really, really vibrant. Again, really crisp detail. Some of the most impressive I've seen on a model like this in a long time. And I would say the paint job is equally as impressive as the sculpt itself. There is so much varying tones of color throughout, just tons of paintwork, no laziness at all when it comes to the paintwork of their models. You can see everything is painted from head to toe, and you can also see that the nails are painted, and again, there's just a plethora of color, but they haven't given it too much color variation to the point where it doesn't look natural. It 100% looks like it could be the coloration of a Quetzalcoatlus, so that is really awesome. And on top of that, the transitions back and forth between the colors is super, super smooth, super naturalistic, and realistic overall. The pose is also nice. I think I would have preferred maybe something a little bit different, just because it does kind of look like the How Long Good version that we've already had. So I would have been, pretty excited to see a pose that's different from the other Quetzalcoatlus models that I have in my collection. But that being said, it looks like a nice naturalistic pose for the Pterosaur, and this pose does work well for the Quetzalcoatlus, being such a massive animal, a king of the skies, I guess you could say, or queen, depending on the sex. But it just gives the entire Pterosaur such a proud look. Like, it really does look like it knows it's a force to be reckoned with, and it's very proud of it. The only thing that might be potentially taken as a downside for this would be the way that the lower jaw kind of connects with the articulated jaw, and the fact that the transition from the jaw back to the model itself isn't super smooth. But again, like I said earlier, that is such a minor nitpick. A gloss coat on the inside of the mouth could have been pretty fun to add to it, but it really doesn't need it. As a whole, everything on this is absolutely awesome, and I am beyond excited to have this Quetzalcoatlus here to add to my collection. So if you are interested in picking one up for yourself, I will include a link in the description to where you can do that on the AliExpress store for Lana Time Shop, where I purchased mine. So make sure you check that link, go grab yourself this gorgeous Quetzalcoatlus, and also like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.